What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Marvel Disney Plus TV show review, and today we're reviewing the first episode of the new show, Loki, episode 1, titled Glorious Purpose. So, yes, we finally have another Marvel show again. It feels like this one took forever to get here because the last two Marvel shows we had came out back-to-back off each other, so like, there was a bit more of a longer wait for this one, so felt like a longer period of time, which it was a little bit more compared to the last one, but still felt like forever. But we're finally here now, and now we're at Loki, so awesome. Now, this show, so upon like when the first batch, am I mean the first batch, I mean like these first three Marvel shows were the first three we kind of heard about, like even before the big San Diego Comic-Con reveal they did back in 2019. There was like before then, like before Endgame came out, we heard about the rumors of, you know, WandaVision, Loki, and Falcon Winter Soldier. Of all those three shows that we first heard about, this was my least anticipated one, purely because, like, Loki, I wasn't like I heard WandaVision, I'm like, okay, explore more about Wanda and Vision, who have not been really, you know, that much developed in the films, and Falcon Winter Soldier could be a fun one. Loki, I was like, okay, I hope, like, it was either gonna be, like, either A, they're gonna bring him back to life, which I'm like, please, like, just let him stay dead, like, for once, like, I thought his ending worked good in Infinity War, that was good, so just let him stay dead. Or B, it was gonna be a prequel series, which I'm like, it's not gonna be fun at all with a prequel series, because, like, you won't see him as a bad guy then. So, I wasn't sure, but then, of course, Endgame came out, and we saw that scene during the time travel section in 2012 of the film, where, you know, that version of Loki picked up the Tesseract and vanished. So I'm like, okay, that's what the Loki show is gonna be about, this guy, which I'm like, alright, I'm more accepting of that. Now it's kind of not the main version of Loki, it's like an alternate timeline version of Loki. But I was still skeptical about this show because I'm like, what's it even going to be about? Like, it's very... And then the trailer started coming out showing it's going to be a very timey-wimey, using Doctor Who terms here, very timey-wimey weird show. And this first episode, honestly, it very much was. Like, upon it coming out, I was getting more excited for it because, like, the trailer showed to be a very wacky show. And, like, of course, Tom Hiddleston and also Owen Wilson, they're working very well off each other from the commercials and trailers. And upon watching the first episode, it was pretty good, I would say. It's a pretty strong, solid first episode. I feel like it was stronger than WandaVision's first episode. I don't know if I would say stronger than Falcon Winter Soldier's first episode, because, I mean, this was a pretty good episode. So the episode, of course, it starts off showing, like, of course, recapping people who might not be aware that this is not about the main Loki. It's about a drifting timeline version of Loki. So they show that scene from Endgame. And then, of course, Loki's captured by the TVA, which is the Time Variant Authoriation. And they deal with, like, it's very crazy. So what we learn about them in this show is that the TVA is that they monitor time, of course, which is what we all kind of knew. But basically, they monitor time in the multiverse, where essentially, we learned that apparently years or centuries ago, there was this big war, this like big outbreak of a war in the multiverse, and like kind of these three big like keepers of time like were managing, and when this war broke out, they decided they have to fix this. So they're like, okay, we're gonna create one singular timeline, a singular path, no multiverse kind of stuff. So like, and if someone starts branching off from the timeline we designated for them, well, then we have to hunt them down and capture them and fix it and correct it so no, you know, multiverse war starts again and such, because if they keep running around for too long, a war could start and whatnot, all that crazy stuff. So immediately they established that through the entirety of the MCU, there's not really any kind of free will. Everything's been predetermined by these guys. They established that Owen Wilson's character Mobius, Agent Mobius, he establishes that there's never really been a free will. Like they've determined everyone's life. Like they knew from the second what everyone's gonna do when they were first born, from the last second to when they were alive. So they knew the entire story of Captain America and Iron Man and all of them. So they knew that entire thing. They planned it out entirely from beginning to end. So it's one of those kind of things where like it's fate and free will. For me, I'm not. This is personally for me. I'm not a big fan of that kind of story beat idea. Because I don't know, it just doesn't click right with me. I'm not really that big a fan of it. One of the DC shows did that one time, Legend of Tomorrow, which like, I don't know, I'm not too big on that idea, so it's just kind of weird to me to think about that kind of story elements. But, and we'll get into this multiverse, because it's a very weird thing they've established with that. I'll get into this in a sec, because there's a lot of questions we can talk about. But the whole episode was, it was very wild and wacky. Like, it's very much like, very on par with like some kind of stuff you'd see Rick and Morty kind of do, which I think, I could be wrong, maybe this show was I think one of the writers from Rick and Morty might be working on this show, or it might be, I know there's a Rick and Morty writer working on one of the Marvel shows. I can't recall which one. It might be this one, or it could be She-Hulk. It could be either one of those. I forget which one. But it could be possibly this one, who knows. But there's a lot of that kind of really weird, wacky stuff in this, where, like, of course, it's kind of this office building where you have to take a number, wait in line and such. They'll put you in this room and burn your clothes off, and then drop you into another room where you're now in a time variation, like, outfit and such, and they'll have you, like, you know, sign these papers to verify everything you've ever said, which is insane. And then they'll put you in another room where, like, you have to walk through this thing to determine whether or not you're a robot or not, and if you are, it will just turn you to goo, which is very weird and wild. And there's also a character called Miss Minutes, who is voiced by the great Tara Strong, who's a legendary voice actor. She's done a lot of things, like Bubbles from Powerpuff Girls, Timmy Turner from Fairly Odd Parents, the original Ben 10, Harley Quinn a lot of time. She's been in a lot of things. You've definitely heard of them before. And she voices this cartoon character named Miss Minutes, who she, on TV, explained the whole, you know, the multiverse thing I just explained. And it seems that, I'm not sure, like, we meet a couple of characters, like we said, we meet Owen Wilson's Agent Mobius. Also, we need to wait to see when he says wow in the show. I was also hoping that, I made a joke saying, what if his first line in the show was that, like, when he first meets Loki, he's like, oh wow, the great Loki. But no, he'll probably say it to someone, like, if they don't, what are you doing? Yeah, it's very, very cool seeing Owen Wilson. It's very kind of funny, and just, it's cool and weird just seeing Owen Wilson as part of the MCU, but, like, he works very well in this. MCU does a good job of taking some actors who I wouldn't peg for, like, these kind of comic book show roles, and they work well. Like, when they cast Paul Rudd as Ant-Man, I was like, I don't know, Paul Rudd as Ant-Man? Is that really what we're having? But he actually worked pretty well, and he does work well here, too. We have a couple other characters here who I have to look on the IMDb for their names. I haven't memorized them yet. There's another character named Hunter B-15, who's one of the, they were called the Minutemen characters, who, like, it's a very similar name to, I think, Faction in Fallout 4, from what I recall from playing it. But they're, like, of course, they're the agents who go around time and history, you know, managing and make sure none of this variant stuff happens, such. And she is very much against the idea that Owen Wilson's character, Agent Mobius, wants to, like, you know, have Loki work for them. He's like, no, like, you get rid of him. We don't want him. And the other character also, there's also Ravonna Renslayer, who's a judge who listens to, like, these other timekeeper authority people will judge a person, and they'll tell her to then prosecute the judge person and whatnot. I think from what I recall, she's the wife of Kang the Conqueror in the comics, who he's a time-traveling kind of dictator and conqueror, who we will see him played by Jonathan Majors in Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, so there's a connection right there already. So I think that's who she is. She's the wife of him, so that's cool. Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, because I remember from the Avengers cartoon, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, that Kang appears in. I remember them saying his wife Ravonna. So yeah, it is her. So I wonder if she'll appear in Ant-Man and the Wasp, or maybe Kang will appear in Loki. Who knows? But yeah, it's interesting seeing, like, you know, Agent Mobius and Loki, like, get along and talk, and he shows him his greatest hits and showing his life and such. And we learned that, we saw from the trailers this scene, but now we've learned that Loki flat out is D.B. Cooper in the MCU, which, of course, D.B. Cooper is the person from history who, like, he hijacked a plane, stole so much money back in the day, and then he jumped off the plane, was never found, the money was never recovered, his body was never found, so unsolved mysteries to this day. But in the MCU was Loki, which is apparently he had a bet with Thor back in the day, which he lost, so he had to go, I guess, steal money from Earth, which is that's a very specific thing for them to be, alright, if you lose, go rob some money off Earth. Like, alright, it's very weird. But it's funny and cool. It's like, it's not the first time we've seen a Marvel property, like, you know, mess with, like, history and say, actually, this is what happened back in the day. Like in X-Men Days of Future Past, which I know is not MCU, but, like, in that film, and they altered a bit about the JFK assassination, saying, oh, you know, JFK was a mutant and Magneto was trying to protect him, that's why he was trying to stop the bullets, that's why it curves in the air, so, all that kind of stuff. But, yeah. It's great seeing, like, you know, in the scene we have Mobius and Loki, they talk about how, he asked him, what makes Loki tick. Like, you know, Loki says how he's a man who wants the rule. He's all about, it's his birthright to rule, which we know it's not. But he asked him, that's clearly not your birthright, man. I've seen your history, man. You enjoy violence. Like, you're a man who loses quite easily a lot of time. So, like, what really makes you tick? And, like, by the end of the episode, when he tries to escape, through us other series of stuff where also Mobius shows him how, you know, he indirectly caused the death of his mother in Thor Dark World, which, like, makes Loki sad. But also, as he tries to escape, he takes the Tesseract and is about to use it to teleport out. But then he finds that there's a bunch of Infinity Stones just kind of sitting, like a bunch of duplicates of some of them just sitting in a drawer. And he asks this guy, where'd you get all these? Like, oh, we found a couple of these from a couple of people over the years now. Like, a couple of guys here use them as paperweights. So I basically established that the Infinity Stones are nothing where they are. And Loki kind of comes to the realization that this might be the greatest power in the universe. If the Infinity Stone, because he tried escaping with the Space Stone, useless. So the Infinity Stones, like, literally can't do anything here. They're literally just rocks. And then afterwards, Loki goes back to that room and watches the rest of his life unfold in the MCU, like in Ragnarok and also Infinity War. And, you know, it's a very good scene. I will say it's a very well done scene of Loki just realizing how there's no point in trying to escape, and his life's kind of like, he sees where his life ends up, and like he's kind of like, there's no point in trying to resist at this point. He kind of just gives in, which, like, I find very cool. And he also does reveal why he does kill. Like, you know, he says the reason why he doesn't enjoy killing. It's just that he has to. He's had to do it all these years because it's a cruel tactic for the weak to use to intimidate fear among others to gain control. Which is basically meaning he's weak. Which I find that very cool. It's cool seeing Loki being very vulnerable and admitting stuff about himself and whatnot. So I thought that was neat. And the episode ends off with, like, you know, Mobius asking for his help because there's another Loki out there who's causing a ruckus among history and killing their Minutemen. And, like, you know, episode ends with, like, this hooded figure who's clearly the other Loki, you know, burning a bunch of these Minutemen in a field back in, like, 1858 or something. And possibly, there's rumors and theories about, you know, there being a female Loki, and also I've heard stuff about there's a female Loki and a kid Loki who might be appearing. Because in the comics, there's been, like, a bunch of different versions of Loki in the comics. So it's possible, maybe this might be the female Loki, possibly. That's what I'm theorizing right now. So, but, you know, this episode overall starts off, like, it's keeping me interested. Like, I'm already, like, interested and intrigued by this concept and story. It's very, I can't wait to see what else they do with this whole TVA thing. There's also even a Skrull we saw in the TVA, which I'm like, so was he a deviant also? Was he a variant? And so it's like, that's kind of fun. But yeah, going back on the multiverse thing, because there's, like, it's very weird things. They established the rules of how there's only a singular timeline, and they established also, like, you know, the Avengers, them time traveling, that was predetermined by them, but Loki escaping was not by them. So, but it's very weird. So they're saying that basically, from what I understand, they're saying there's no multiverse. Like, there's only this one, the main timeline in the MCU. There's only this timeline, and that's it. But that raises questions, because we know there can't be no multiverse because there are multiple projects going forward in the phase that involve multiverse. Like after Loki we have Black Widow, but after Black Widow we have the What If series, which is a multiverse show showing these, like, what if scenario realities where, like, what if this actually happened here and what if this happened instead? Like, that's a multiverse thing. And then, of course, Spider-Man 3, No Way Home, we know that's gonna have, like, the universes of, like, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, like, colliding here. Like, we know that Electro and Doc Ock are there, so, like, we know that. And also Doctor Strange 2, literally subtitled Multiverse of Madness, so, like, it's very confusing. And also they established that, like they have, this whole time travel thing was on purpose. They wanted them to do this, but Loki, that was on purpose, that they designed that for them. But Loki leaving was not. But I'm in a Discord group that's run by Jovenshire from, like, formerly from Smosh Games, and on it we were talking about how, like, you know, he brought up a good point, how, like, you know, if Loki's a variant, like, Loki was not supposed to leave, he's a variant, but then what about Captain America in Endgame? Like, what about him, you know, leaving and going this little life with Peggy, making a branching timeline there, and then also showing up at the end of the film as Old Man Cap. I'm like, oh yeah, wait, that's a good point. Was that was that purposeful? Like, was that meant to happen, or was that another, or is that, I don't get it. Why is it like, see how I mean it raises questions, like, how is Cap allowed to make this branching timeline, but Loki's not? Is it because, like, he's Captain America and he's Loki? Doubt it, but, like, it's very, I don't really know, like, it's very, like, my working theory is that possibly what's going to happen, because, like, a lot of us in that server were chatting how, I mean, there's going to definitely be some kind of breaking of the timeline and multiverse in this show, because, like I said, we know the multiverse is going to play a big part in a lot of projects going forward, so it's clearly not a thing that's non-existent, so something's going to happen. My guess is that, and then they established that time works differently than TVA, so possibly, what I'm thinking is that maybe the entirety of this show takes place, like the first season takes place throughout the rest of Endgame, so after Loki, like, vanished, of course, and went to, like, that, I forget where he went to after he took the Tesseract again. It was like it was like a desert area. I'll put in the video where it was again. But like he goes there, and then afterwards he's taken by the TVA. So of course, and throughout the rest of the show, these next like five episodes, because there's gonna be 6 episodes. These 6 episodes will be taking place throughout the rest of Endgame, and then the show ends with like something that breaks the timeline multiverse, like kind of just cracks it, which then will lead into like all these other shows and films, and like, and that's why at the end of Endgame, Cap was able to go live off of Peggy and allowed to, and why he was able to then show up as Old Man Cap. So that's my theory. Maybe that's why that happened. That's what I'm working off right now. But still, there's like a lot of questions need to be answered about that. So yeah, overall, like I think, like I said, like this will be definitely an interesting show watching. Like, oh yeah, one thing I want to say. So if everything's planned out and purposeful, that means Evan Peters' Ralph Bohner was on purpose. Thanks, guys. That was great. I love that you guys made that be a thing that was on purpose. Anyway, so I think like this was a solid start. I feel like next episode going forward and the rest of the episodes will be very wacky and weird. So it'll definitely be very interesting of a show to watch. This episode, I would say, it's like sitting between a 7 and 8, but it's a little bit more closer to 7 the more I think about it right now. I mean, it might change going forward, who knows, but like, because it was a great start. It was very weird and wild, but a lot of these things, like these weird questions raised by their rules in the multiverse, and also, like I said, I'm not a fan of the predetermined fate thing, so like, I don't know, there's kind of stuff like, it's kind of close to a 7 for me, so it's like between a 7 and 8 right now, but closer to a 7. So that's where I'm at right now with this episode, but it was a solid start. I can't wait to see how the rest of the show goes, so it's going to be definitely very interesting. And they have said this show, more so than the last 2, will be very important to the MCU going forward, so that'll be cool to see. Anyways, yeah. Thank you all for watching. Tell me in the comment section down below, what did you think of the first episode of Loki? I was definitely stuttering my words half-time in this review. God. I'll try better next time. Whatever. Tell me what you thought of the first episode in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys all next week for episode 2 of Loki. So yeah, I'll see you guys all later. Goodbye. Hey, if you like that video, guess what? YouTube put out a video just for you on the left. Or, if you want to take my advice, watch the most recent video on the right. Thanks for watching.